Pop!
Welcome Dagur from Misþyrming.
Tusen tack.
Good to have you here.
Yes, thank you.
How are you today?
I am pretty good. It's been a nerve-wracking month. We did 4 festivals in 3 weeks, and more or less just stayed on the mainland. We went from Romania to Czech Republic, and then to Italy and Austria. Yeah, it's been a busy summer, busy year. Finally, after COVID, things seem to be getting into balance again.
So can you please give a short background of Misþyrming's story?
Sure. This year the band turns 10. We formed the idea of the band in 2013. Back then it was just me and a drummer. And it was only supposed to be like a studio project. But after we recorded the first album, we were so happy with the outcome that we decided to make it into a full proper band, and we tried forming a live lineup with another guitarist and a bassist, and since then it's just been rolling on and expanding. And we are creative, and we are passionate about it, and it seems fairly successful. So we still have the same inspiration to go on with a band as we did 10 years ago.
Great. You have 3 full-length albums.
Yes.
Is that correct? I love Medhamri. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
Especially Engine Fokun.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. The tempo in that song.
Slow song.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what are you working on right now?
That's a big question. I'm always working on something. I have this and this. Medhamri was not supposed to be longer than 45 minutes. So I actually have some more music that was supposed to be on that album. And the boys and I, we are always playing around with some ideas. Sometimes it's not even serious, but if we put a little bit of effort into a stupid idea, it might become something fantastic. So we're making demos, and some of it might become a new band or just a one-off recording project or something.
Are you the one creating the music?
Yes.
And writing the lyrics?
In Misþyrming, yeah. But we call our collective Vánagandur, and it basically is like a umbrella term for many of our bands that like side projects, and like Misþyrming is my creative outlet, and then Thomas, Misþyrming guitarist, he has another creative outlet in Nadra, and there are like, I don't know, 10 or 15 more bands that fit into this. Yeah.
So can you tell us a bit about your lyrics? Because that's very interesting, like what are they about, and you can explore that a little bit.
Sure. I don't like to be very straight to the point when I'm writing lyrics. I sort of became a poet by default because I'm mostly a musician and I just really love music. But then when you make a song and you don't have any lyrics, you kind of have the pressure to write some lyrics, and I don't want to write just something about death and chaos. I would rather try to dig in to my own self and see what's bothering me, or if there's something I can turn into expression with words. So I've been learning along the way to make something poetic out of my thoughts and emotions.
Do you sing mostly in Icelandic?
Yes, only.
Yeah, only?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you feel that it's more easy to express yourself?
Yeah. It's very important for me to sing in my mother language.
Yeah.
It's there's like English as a secondary language. There's always my vocabulary is not as great as in Icelandic, so there's nothing haltering me when I speak in Icelandic, and I think that's the most honest way to sing.
So we were talking about your lyrics. Can we dig into what music inspires you, and what made you start this band?
Sure. I first got into metal when I was 8 years old, and I immediately felt this urge to dig deeper and explore all this, especially the soundscape. I think it's really majestic and powerful. This heavy guitars.
Did you meet it here in Iceland, or?
Yes, I got my first metal CD was Mutter by Rammstein, and I was absolutely fascinated by the whole spectrum of it, like the sound, the instrumentals, and the rhythm, the beat, and I didn't understand any of the lyrics, obviously, but that didn't matter at all. And then I started digging deeper, getting into Metallica and more slowly, more and more extreme. And then eventually, I think I was 17. I got introduced to black metal. Started with some entry-level stuff like Behemoth and Mayhem, and I was absolutely fascinated by that as well. And yeah, like I said, I have a very big urge to dig and find something new and something more extreme, more expressive and explosive. And it's not necessarily all metal, but it's mainly my biggest interest in music.
Were you in bands before this Þyrming?
Yes, I had a few bands. I wanted to become a guitarist immediately when I heard this music. I saw a live DVD where there was a big stage and crazy applauding crowd, and yeah, and yeah, I thought this is something untouchable. I would love to be able to do something like this, and I had no idea how loud it actually is in this situation. And yeah, I've been going to concerts since I was a kid. When I was around, 18 or something, I started going into bars where the age limit here is 20, and it's hard to get into shows because most of the venues are bars. But I got introduced to bands like Svartidauði and Sinmara at that time when I was a teenager. Yes, absolutely fantastic bands. And that was yet another fascination that happened there, and they really inspired me, and it was a totally different thing to see it in a live setting. because the atmosphere is absolutely captivating. You really get, I don't know, engulfed in it or by it. It's much more different from listening at home, because you can always press pause, you can always change the volume and all that. But if you're at the live setting, it just goes over you, and you just have to take it.
So, when do you think you are the most creative? I mean, we were talking about lyrics. In what state would you say that you write the best lyrics? When is the most inspiring time for you?
That's hard to say. Inspiration always comes without a warning, and the moment it hits me, I just have to take a break from whatever I'm doing. If it's late in the evening, I'm gonna skip sleep. Like I will work on it, and sometimes there's weeks or even months where I have no drive to write anything. But just sitting down with a guitar and practice or jam, sometimes you just get magic out of that. So just as looking at the guitar as a pleasant hobby, you can maybe create something all of a sudden out of nowhere just by doing that. And many times I'm inspired by another artist or a band. Like if I go to a show and if it's a fantastic show and I see something new, something surprising, or something very cathartic for me, I'm very likely to go home and try to craft something without stealing the idea that I was inspired by.
What about Iceland? I mean, scenery here is fantastic. What about the nature and the mythologies and things that we are surrounded by?
Not so much for me. The surroundings here are in fact beautiful, but this is my home and I'm kind of used to it. And the winters here are very harsh, and there's quite some possibility that it affects the mood, which of course gives you the tendency to make something dark.
So we are talking a lot about religion and Satanism in this movie, so I just wanted to ask you, I read that people here in Iceland, they are not so religious. Like
No.
30% say that they are not religious, 10% say that they are atheists, and 5% believes in Asatru, the Norse religion.
Yes.
How do you look on it?
Well, I was raised a Christian, but it was more like just by tradition. Like there was no big importance in actual practice of religion, like not going to church on Sundays or anything. Maybe on Christmas, but I think it's just dying with the generations. Iceland used to be strongly Christian, Lutheran, I think, and yeah, it's just dying out. I think Nietzsche was right about that, which is good in many ways and maybe bad in other ways, because we have this tendency to believe in something, and when you believe in nothing, you might just go on a rampage.
Exactly. But if we look into the opposite then, so what is Satanism to you? Because many bands sing about Satanism, many of them are Satanists.
Yes. I tried to get into that literature, and it didn't resonate with me at all. I see the fascinating rebellious aspect of it, being antisocial and all that, and I'm all for antisocial behavior and ideologies, but Satanism, I think it's a little bit too specific for my personal viewpoint in religion. I think it should be a heavy focus on each and everyone's independent character.
So if we turn it a little bit more into spirituality, so is occultism something that you have come in contact with?
Also gave that a shot.
Okay. In what
But
way?
no, I understand these things, or I like to believe I do. I can comprehend them, and all these ritualistic aspects are. I think they're quite fascinating, especially if you're like mixing it with music, and but no, I'm just too down to earth about all this stuff. I really need to see things to believe them.
Yeah. So your lyrics are more about self-experienced things than.
Yes, sure.
Is it about society?
Sometimes it's about society, like observations. Like there's sometimes a critical tone to it.
I can feel it in your music.
Yeah.
Like the fury, the energy. Like
Yeah, and there comes the again topic of being antisocial. Like.
Can you explore that a little bit if you can?
Just it's a need to be different from the normal mundane, characterless majority of people. It sounds very arrogant, and it might be, but yeah, when you listen to the radio and you hear the same shit again and again, and there's so much uninspired culture, especially here in Iceland. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and she said there's no culture here. And I think, for example, our architecture, houses here are absolutely boring. They're all square, and they have like the old houses have signs of poverty. But like when I go to Europe, I'm fascinated by the especially architecture.
Yeah, you're right about that.
So
actually,
I think that Iceland has it's a dump.
I read somewhere that you were quite harsh against Iceland and society here.
Yes, that's one viewpoint.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be like totalitarian, but it's just it's one idea, one observation, and that inspired me to write that song called "Iceland Castrated Dump." But you know, our moods are different day by day, and like, sometimes you're like, oh fuck this place, and sometimes you're like, okay, this is my home. I feel best when I'm here. So no, there's definitely many positive sides to this little island.
Iceland is a country with a strong mythology, obviously.
Uh-huh.
At least for us, maybe that's just a tourist thing, but I think it is like fairy tales, mysterious creatures.
Yeah.
And you also have a long history of Vikings. We can see Vikings on each and every sign here in the city.
Yes, that's a tourist thing.
Yeah,
All that Viking bullshit. We are.
How do you look upon it?
I really despise all the tourism industry. I have no problem with the tourists themselves, but everything that has been created around the tourism here is really I don't know. It gives me some distaste. But I understand why this is a popular location to go, and like there was this boom 10 years ago after they did some, I don't know, Game of Thrones episodes were filmed here, and Justin Bieber video, and Iceland became a hot location for tourism.
A lot of Americans here.
Yes, and our main shopping street used to be a nice place to walk around and do some window shopping, but now it's all just puffin shops and Viking helmet shops, plastic Viking helmet shops, and I find it not that great.
No. How would you say, I mean, you talk about the metal scene here, how do you feel it is today compared to when you first came in contact with metal, for instance?
Here in Iceland? It's a lot has changed. I think there was a lot more activity in black metal when I was getting into it. We used to have more venues here. They were all torn down, and hotels were constructed instead. That was the first thing that made us from this area hate the tourism industry. And then when COVID hit, all those hotels were empty, and we had no place to have a show. We still have a couple of venues, but I don't know. There's something different. I think it comes and goes in waves. Who knows? Maybe there's gonna be a big punk scene in 10 years from now. Like not like. Wimpy punk, I'm talking about, like old school 70s punk. Maybe that will happen, and maybe not. Maybe we're gonna have another great metal scene in 20 years or something. But yeah, I think it has to do with generations.
What does the name Misþyrming stand for, and what does it mean to you?
Misþyrming basically means abuse, something like no mercy. It's like the opposite of mercy, and it's a very vile word. It's only used like in news about some horrible acts like torture or something, and it has like it's a powerful word. Like it shows some sort of dominance. And that's kind of the idea that I wanted the sound of this band to represent, and the whole feel, like this very dominant attitude where it's like bigger than you, or so that the listener feels like almost submissive. That's sort of the feeling I was explaining that I felt when I saw Svartidauði for the first time, like terrifying stuff. And
you also have a very strong expression on stage.
Yes.
So you're like a bit in a gore or something?
Yes, blood. There's always blood, and that's it is a very important part of the show for us. It's
why?
In a sense, it represents death, and it stinks, and it looks cool.
It does.
Yeah, and I'm not a big fan of bands that are just playing in their regular T-shirts and cargo shorts. That's more like the death metal approach. So it has some theatrical element as well, but it has to be real. Because just like with singing in the mother language, like I think that you can't have anything fake. That's just another important thing. And it really now that it's become routine for every show since the beginning, but now that it is routine, it really, just the moment we pour the blood on us, we know it's game mode.
What is your view on humanity and society in general? Do you need a beer?
Wow. Well, usually when I've been annoyed or disgusted by humanity, I just realize that I'm in a shitty mood. So as I'm growing up, I'm starting to just accept anything. But you know, there's of course a lot of stupidity in society, and hierarchy is. There's a lot of questionable things in just like having a government and all that. Of course, it would be total chaos if we had anarchy, and I wouldn't really want to go for that. I'm happy to pay taxes if they're being used to make roads.
Yeah.
And keep the light poles turned on, but yeah. It's very nice to stay away from people.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess maybe it's easy here.
Yeah, it's pretty easy, and then again, you should just surround yourself with people that you care to spend your time with, people that you trust, or people that you can trust.
Do you have any views about what happened there in the 90s? I mean, with mayhem and Euronymous and all those stories. What is your relation? Because I guess you are quite young. So
when I was getting into black metal in the beginning, it was I was reading a lot about the 90s in Norway, and I thought it was like a fascinating subject, like as a morbid curiosity. But I don't know how it should be to actually kill a man or burn down a church. I never really felt the urge to do that. Maybe one time, but I didn't go through with it.
Oh, really? We've also asked all our people we meet here about the Icelandica book.
Yes.
So when you meet someone here that you maybe want to date, you have to check first if you're related.
You don't have to.
Maybe you just know it.
We all know that we are related here, but it's It's pretty far-fetched. It's not very likely that you sleep with your cousin.
No, okay. But have you any fun stories maybe around it? Or?
No, not.
Have you checked it yourself?
Yeah. It's very nice, just for fun, because it's a very, very thorough archive of the history of Icelanders.
How far does it go back?
Since the island was inhabited, it's like 1200 years.
That's fantastic. So
Yeah.
every person is in that book. Sorry.
Not every person, but most of them. And they used to keep these logs about everyone who owned a farm or a businessman or whatever, and they released this book and kept updating it throughout the ages, where they wrote like, this guy, son of that guy, son of that guy, and they go on like talking about the generations. So you maybe read a whole page in the book that's just going through the great grandfather and the great great grandfather.
Wow.
And these documents made it possible to create this archive. And if you are Icelandic or like have like a social ID here, you have access to this website and you can look yourself up. You can't really dig on other people. That's like private information, but you can always look up other people and see how related you are to them. And you can look up old people from the sagas and see their family trees and all that.
So have you been able to trace your whole way back, like so far?
Yes, I know for a fact that I am one of my ancestors is Egill Skallagrímsson, a guy from Egil's saga. It's a legendary guy that we are taught about in school. So he's like my ancestor from 1,000 years back.
Fantastic. I want a book like that.
Yeah.
Every country should have a book like that. That's fantastic. So you can see your roots so back far in time. Cool. So I would like to say thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you too.
And good luck with the new album and
yes, thanks.
and your musical career.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.